To be honest, I don't really like skeleton dial watches, and the only reason I got this one was to simply add one to my collection. Now, the problem was looking through all the different varieties. Most of them were too ugly or quite difficult to actually pick out the minute and hour hands. Find them quite illegible to check the time. Forsining had quite a wide range of skeleton dials, and I think throughout all of them, this was the one that was the cleanest looking, and so the one most legible and easiest to check the time. So this is the Forsining A2. Let's have a look at this thing. Good day to you all, and welcome back to another BBW review. Today we'll be looking at the Forsining A2, my first and probably only skeleton dial watch. As I mentioned, I ran through a lot of different varieties until I found out one that was kind of acceptable, and the only criteria I used was, can I check the time in less than a second? And with this one, because the skeleton, it's not completely skeletonized, you do have kind of a third of a dial here. You can at least pick out the hour and the minute hands because it also has legible markers. So this is quite acceptable, but it's still a skeleton dial and not really one for me. So let's go through the basic dimensions. As in most skeleton dials, they do appear to be over 42 millimeters. This is about 42.5 millimeters in diameter. This is another thing that's common to skeleton dials. The unnaturally large girth from base to the flat crystal on top is 14.5 millimeters, and I'm not sure how they justify that. What else do they add to make it so deep? You have a standard alloy case, which is chrome plated, a 20 millimeter lug width, but what was surprising was how compact it was. You have a 48.7 lug to lug, and as you can see, the lugs start quite deep into the case, and they do point down quite a lot to hug the wrist, so it should fit even the smallest wrist quite okay. You have a signed Forsining crown, which has a nice action. It's quite reassuringly stiff, not flopping everywhere. So I was happy with the action on the movement there. By the way, the movement is a Tongji. Forsining mostly use Tongji in all their watches because they're absolute workhorses. Let's set that to the desired time, keeping it out of the way of the movement there. So going through the movement, as I mentioned, you have a flat mineral crystal on top, then going into the dial itself. Now, you can't really see it on the video, but this outer ring is actually cream coloured, which does look quite nice and goes better with the brown strap than if it were a white dial. Right, zooming in to get a bit more detail there. You have, every 5 minutes, you have numbers displaying every 5 minutes. In between those, you have minutes, and even shorter markers in between the printed minute markers. The applied indices are double battens. There is not a double batten at the 12. Instead, you get a printed Forsining logo, and at the 6, you get the Forsining name. Within the 1/3 of your cream dial, you have a picture of the movement. Not the most beautiful thing, but it's okay to look at, with the balance wheel wobbling back and forward at the 9 o'clock position. The hands themselves are sword-shaped hands. So as you can see, the hands, they are the hour and the minute. They are both half skeletonized and half loomed. And I think if it wasn't for that loomed half, if it was just skeletonized, that would be a real problem, where it would just disappear amongst the movement below. So fortunately, at least that gives us a bit better visibility. Then you have the second hand, a thin stick with the lollipop at the end. So onto the back, which is a stainless steel back, water resistant, and if it's not mentioned, it's defaults to a 30 meter or 3 ATM, and A2 is the designation of the watch. There you have your Tongji movement. Again, it is a real workhorse with a bi-directional rotor. Now the power reserve is stated at 35 hours, but if it's constantly on your wrist, that bi-directional rotor is going to give you power all day until you remove the watch. It doesn't exactly say how many joules it is. I would guess 17 joules. It is a screw-down cover. Now onto the strap. 20 millimeters, which narrows down to 18. It's the strap itself. Usually they'll state it's a genuine leather strap. Now, since this one doesn't, since it's not marked, I can just assume it's not leather. It's some kind of fake or faux plastic that appears to be leather. But saying that, it's quite soft and supple. I'm guessing it would take some time to break in, and I would suggest if you do, or you are interested in this watch, to remove it for another brown, real leather strap. You have one simple keeper, which is fixed, and at the end, a very simple buckle and tang. Absolutely basic as you can get, with a very wobbly tang there. No expense spared at all there, obviously. Oh, one thing I forgot to mention, which I guess is quite important, is the price. As always, shipped and packed from China, this costs $11. And for $11, it's okay if you like this skeleton dial design. So this is the wrist shot. Not a very handsome one, and that really does sit high on the wrist. But a 48mm lug to lug, you don't get an overhang, but because the watch is so deep, it does tend to kind of hover at the end of each lug, leaving quite a gap on both sides. So not ideal. And again, I do not for the life of me imagine how they made such a deep case and for what reason. I thought a skeletonized watch would actually be thinner, but clearly not. Without doubt, the absolute king of the skeleton dial has to be Richard Mille. Now, I will admit that their movements, their in-house movements, and the incredible craftsmanship and detail that goes into their watches are quite unparalleled. But for some reason, they then decide to put all that workmanship into the ugliest cases I've ever seen. These huge, colourful bricks of things where telling the time is going to take at least 2 or 3 seconds, which for me kind of defeats the purpose of having a watch. Now, because I ride a motorbike for about 3 hours every day, I'm constantly staring down to check the time. Now, if I were to wear a Richard Mille, I would be in the hospital hospital by now. Even with this one, it takes just over a second to check the time. Ideally, a watch should be able to be read clearly and legibly within a second. If you cannot do that, I just think it's a badly designed watch, but that's just my opinion. I understand why people like Richard Mille, but I do not understand why they like anything outside of the movements. Absolutely hideous looking creations. Anyway, that's my small rant. This one actually looks a bit better, although clearly the craftsmanship and workmanship is not as good. So for $11, if you are interested, this is the Forsining A2 with a sturdy workhorse or a Tongji movement and decent legibility considering it is almost a complete skeleton dial. So there you have it. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again with another watch on the green chair. Until then, take it easy.